Well, hi everyone, and thank you for joining me for today's session, The Simple Complexity of Automation in RPA. My name is Rafael Casas. I'm the Senior Manager of the Sage Account Solutions Group with Sage. So today what we're going to be looking at, what we're going to be discussing are quite a few important areas to understand what robotic process automation is. We're going to look at what is RPA, what are the benefits of RPA, what are the possible drawbacks of RPA, and then we're going to look at some business processes for RPA, best practices for RPA implementation. And lastly, we're going to go over a topic that I love to go over that I think really is a concept that will help you in all areas of your firm and your business. It's to utilize the clean your room concept that was originally done from Dr. Jordan Peterson. So we'll get into that a little bit as well. So the first thing we want to dive into is what is robotic process automation? What is RPA? You hear about it a lot. It's a top 5 hard trend in the industry. So let's go over that. First, we want to understand what are the different types of bots. And an overview of robotic process automation is that it's basically an application of technology that allows employees in a company to configure software bots or robots to execute as a digital worker. A bot can capture and interpret existing applications for processing a transaction, manipulating data, triggering responses, and communicating with other digital systems like a human worker would. And lastly, RPA is really best suited for rules-based defined processes and structured data sets. So the next generation of RPA to leverage unstructured data and perform machine learning functions is really where the RPA industry is at the moment. So it's really important, though, to know that it's not just one bot fits all. There's several different types of bots, and we want to break those different types of bots down. And on this particular slide, you're going to see 3 different types of bots. However, there's even 4 or 5 different types of bots that we'll talk about here shortly. So the first one we want to point out here and discuss is the attended automation, the attended bot or attended RPA. Essentially, what an attended bot is, or an attended bot's going to do, is going to handle tasks for individual employees. And the employees themselves, a person will actually trigger and direct a bot to carry out an activity. As opposed to an unattended bot, unattended automation or unattended RPA, that actually automates back office processes at scale. So it's really automating back office end to end with no really intervention. It's provision based off of rule-based processes or actions or triggers. And so that is going to be a bit more more intensive on the back end. And generally that's going to be running on recurring basis or recurring task basis. So just to quickly break those two down, an attended bot operates under your direction. An unattended bot follows your rules to complete processes automatically. And then we've got a third type of bot, which is really the new iteration of bots. It's cognitive bot or intelligent automation. You probably hear about that all the time. Basically, it's developed using cognitive technology. It could be a combination of RPA and intelligent self-learning systems such as machine learning, speech recognition, NPL, natural language processing. Though that's really the new latest and greatest that most folks are using, and that really kind of focuses on unstructured data and really allows you to help to really start to maximize the types of bots that you have in place with unstructured data sets. Then there's another area, another thing you'll probably hear about a lot is hyperautomation. That essentially brings tools together, several components of automation, integrating tools and technologies that amplify the ability to automate work. So it starts at the RPA level at its core and then expands automation, capability with our AI, process mining, analytics, and other advanced tools. The idea within hyperautomation is to automate more and more knowledge work and engage everyone in an organization to be part of the transformation. But one thing that I just talked about here was process mining. Now that's the 4th or 5th type of bot that you actually will hear about, and a lot of the vendors actually will bring forth. So there's things that they can come at the nomenclature of process mining bots or discovery bots. And what that actually helps you do is during the initial business analysis stages or business process improvement stages, when you're trying to implement a bot, you're actually able to implement these thin clients onto your staff members or your business members of your firm. And this will actually allow you to start pulling data and information and understanding what types of behaviors that your staff members are having. So if they're constantly copying and pasting throughout the day a specific type of function or specific type of data, that discovery bot is going to find that out. It's going to give you that information in a dashboard, and it's going to tell you, hey, this could be a possible use. So this is extremely helpful because you don't have time, and it's very time intensive and laborious to actually sit down and work with every segment of your business and every person in your business to actually to figure out what is going to be the best use case. A lot of times we have high level ideas of what use cases we want to use for RPA, but this is an extremely helpful tool, a lot to understand that not only the behavior of your employees and your staff members, but also what could be a great RPA case that you haven't thought about. And generally, the rule of thumb with building that type of RPA case, and we'll talk about that later in the session here, is going to be that if it is something that is manual task that's taken you over 15 minutes or at least 15 minutes, then it can be automated and it can be scripted and it should be automated. So that's kind of the rule of thumb when you're looking at specific types of RPA use cases. Now, one last thing, and I'll get into this before we move into the next slide. It's important to understand that these 3 or 4 different kind of bots do not come at the same price point. That's why you have to familiarize yourself. They come with different complexities of implementation, different complexities of scoping, and they come at different licensing costs. So that's why it's really important to understand that there's several different kinds, that it's not just one bot fits them all. So now we're going to look at this McKinsey article and really talking about RPA by the numbers and really kind of giving you a better perspective of what to think about and what to look at when you're thinking about RPA. In this article, our research suggests that as many as 45% of activities individuals are paid to perform can be automated by adapting currently demonstrated technologies. In the US alone, these activities represent about $2 trillion in annual wages. So although we think of automation primarily affecting low skill, low wage roles, we discover that even the highest paid occupations in the economy, such as financial managers, physicians, and senior executives, including CEOs, have a significant amount of activity that can be automated. So it's important to not be myopic in thinking that RPA is just going to take the low-level jobs. Although those mundane tasks are something you obviously want to look at to help redefinition of jobs, and we'll talk about that later. But you also want to look at every segment of the business, from the executive C-suite level, the executive level, to top end of segments of lines of business. So you want to make sure you're evaluating every area of your business and where a bot and where the automation can fit and where it can bring the best value for you. Now, next, we want to really understand the RPA community. I know, coming from the accounting profession, generally what you do just by nature is when you're looking for a new accounting system, when you're looking for a new HR or payroll system or a tax software, you're looking at who are all the vendors, what do they offer, what is their sweet spots, what are they really targeting? And so it's really important to get a grasp on that when you're working with the RPA community, just to understand who are some of the players. So here in the core RPA vendors, those top 3 have been the top core vendors for many years within the RPA robotic process automation community. So you've got a UiPath, Automation Anywhere, which have generally been the leaders, Blue Prism as well. Those are the 3 real big leaders within the RPA community. Then you've got tech partners like Microsoft, Google, IBM, and Abby. And those 3 actually primarily focus a lot on the OCR. Essentially, that's really having the ability to scan documents and then converting that into translatable data that can easily be imported or brought into your technology systems. So those are really great, and that's kind of where those technology partners fit into with RPA. So that, again, when I talk about OCR, it's something like you can think of if you've heard of auto entry, where you can scan using a scanner, a traditional scanner, bank statements or receipts or invoice, or you can even use the app on your phone to do that. What that will do is then translate that data into a text file information that can be read and brought in and mapped into your GL. So that's kind of the technology, again, with those really assist with on the RPA vendor side. And then you've got the RPA consultants, who most of you probably already know who all these are: Accenture, PwC, EY, Cognizant. But before we move forward, what I want to make sure that you do understand and are aware of is that most of these, if not all of these, really focus on enterprise. So it is generally very, very expensive. There is another core RPA vendor called Electronic RPA, who in fact Sage is actually partnered with, being the first ERP vendor and RPA vendor that have a true partnership. And they're actually very much focused for the accounting community. They are also a fraction of the cost, and we'll discuss that here a little bit shortly as well. But that's someone to also very much keep in mind as you're looking at different vendors. Now, not only is it important for us to know who the vendors are, we want to know where they stand. And this G2 grid of RPA within this last year, and it actually just slightly changed within 2020, you'll see the leaders, as I was speaking about, Automation Anywhere, UiPath. At the bottom here, you've got in a green lightning bolt is Electronic RPA, whom I was just discussing. Now, this is under a high performance, and as well as they're very, very high on the UX and customer experience. They actually just ranked #1 in the United States for customer experience. So one thing that I want to point out is that you should really focus on the movement of no code or low code. And what that is actually to do is not spend a lot on developers to help you implement or code these different types of bots. You want to have the ability to just kind of drag and drop certain types of functions or elements where coding is very, very minimal, or there's no coding at all. And that's not only going to help you adapt and adopt these new technologies, but it's also going to help you maintain them at a much faster pace if you need to pivot or adapt. So that's the movement that you really want to follow. And especially in the profession, you want to make sure that you're looking at that with any type of platform to look for no code or low code. Now, I really want to break down some of the costs. Now, this is just a great example. Actually, it's changed, but an example of Sage and what we offer for the Sage Account Solutions, the Sage Accounts Network for the United States. This pricing has changed, but this is kind of going to give you a good idea. So before I break this down, I do want to just let you know that really what does RPA look like when it's getting the cost acquisition of doing this. There was a great article by Deloitte talking about that some can pay from $4,000 to $15,000 for one bot. However, organizations may need as much as $20 million for a complete RPA solution, up to 500 bots, which can displace over 1,000 employees and generate over $100 million in savings. So the RPA implementation cost varies from one vendor to another. RPA solutions from UiPath can cost as much as $20,000 depending on the level of automation needed. Automation Anywhere can cost also within that range, though theirs is based on the number of bots. So it all different kind of ranges on the price points. You also have to factor in RPA consulting or implementation costs, which will depend on whom you choose to hire, how you will be communicating with them. Generally, you will pay more than for working consultants from the Fortune 500 consulting firm, could be upwards of $500 an hour. So these are all things that you absolutely want to make sure that you have a great grasp on understanding on before you jump in. And this has actually been a really big deterrent in the accounting profession because the price is so high and there hasn't been any vendors that can actually meet a good ROI for smaller accounting firms. So when I look at this particular type of breakdown, you've got team, business, corporate. These are specifically types of breakdown. So team, business, corporate. So you've got like 3 months of analytics storage, 6 months, 12 months. But if you look on here on the left-hand side, it's about $600 annually as opposed to the 2,000 and 5,000 corporate. But you also look at the type of bots that you receive: attended bots, unattended bots, the studio, which was where you actually develop the bots to be deployed. That's all extremely important. Um, but I do want to point out that someone like Electronic and UiPath and even Automation Anywhere, all of these have what's called a community edition. So a community edition is generally and historically not, it's more of a sandbox where you can build out RPA bots in this sandbox studio. And so they're not really ready for commercial use, or you couldn't put it into production, but it's a really, really great tool for you to get your hands dirty and start building bots and start building that functionality and understanding how to do it. But one secret that I can share with you with Electronic, this team version here, which is actually it's actually a full-fledged commercial-ready, production-ready platform, has now turned into their community edition. So you can actually technically, for free, use their new community edition, and it's actually stable and can be used for free on your any of your accounting systems or any systems for that matter that you want to deploy it on. Now, this case here is a 10 RPA bots, Electronic versus other RPAs. Now, one thing that I wanted before we break this down, and when I talk about costs, attended bots, cognitive bots, and that they come at different price points, one thing to also keep in mind is that one bot can do a multitude of different types of processes. It isn't just one process for one bot, and I've got 20 different processes I want to actually build out and implement with an RPA. That means I've got to get 10 or 20 different bots to do this. Rule of thumb is generally you can have one bot do 5 concurrent processes, but you can have one bot do a multitude of different processes. So you don't need to have a ton of bots depending on the type of processes that you want to build them out for. So that's one thing that can save you costs. But within this particular breakdown, you can look here at kind of the differences in cost and what this would look like realistically. So you have the developer tool from Electronic, which costs a flat $5,000 a year. Comes with a Studio IDE, so you can develop these bots, then you can potentially resell these bots to your clients yourself. But look at within this, you see that there's no cost for attended bots, no cost for unattended bots. The total annual technology cost for a client is $5,000. Then you look at someone like UiPath, Automation Anywhere, Blue Prisms, Pegasystems. You get the developer tool, which costs anywhere from $1,500 to $7,000 a year. Then you have to pay additional fees for attendant, $6,000 to $12,000, depending on 5 to 10 bots. Attended bots, then you've got another 5 unattended bots, which can be another $15,000 to $25,000. As you'll see, those bots cost different, attended versus unattended bots. So the total annual technology cost for a client here is closer to $22,000 to $40,000. So it's important to understand how many attended bots you would need, how many unattended bots. And you also want to make sure the implementation costs. Those are some things that we'll talk about here in a minute, but you want to factor those in as well. Now we're going to look at some of the benefits of RPA. So what are the benefits of RPA? Really, just simplistically, it's reduce human intervention, ability to complete monotonous, mundane tasks while keeping control of workflows within the company. RPA also enables better data integrity, removing human possible, and that also falls in line with the rule sets and the business rules that you set out to build within this bots. A warning, regardless of if you adopt RPA, AI, blockchain, etc., all of these new innovations, if you don't invest in improving your business processes and culture holistically, the implementation will fail. I've seen this happen time and time again. So you've got to make sure that you're focusing at least 80% of your time on the business processes and where these fit and where these make sense, and building out great proof of concepts, but focusing a lot on the business processes and the data coming in, because that is going to really allow you to be successful in these implementations. Now, another McKinsey article really regarding the redefinition of jobs and business processes is a massive benefit. According to our analysis, fewer than 5% of occupations can be entirely automated using current technology. However, about 60% of occupations could have 30% or more of their constituent activities automated. Automation is likely to change the vast majority of occupations, at least to some degree, which will necessitate significant job redefinition and a transformation of business processes. Accountants will spend less time on audit, tax, and bookkeeping and more time advising clients. So this is really, really important because the redefinition of jobs, you're actually empowering your staff members to do more revenue generating advisory services where you can define the jobs that they're doing. These staff that are doing a lot of mundane task work can be automated. So it allows them to really flourish within the type of brilliance that they have available to them. So this is really, really, really important and something that you should absolutely focus on, as well as the type of information that you'll be able to give them and empower them and help them cascade down to their team members to make sure that they have a major buy-in and that they're excited about this and they're not coming from a fear-based area. Now let's look at some of the fun parts of this. What are the possible drawbacks of RPA? Some of the possible drawbacks of RPA: through 2021, 40% of enterprises will have RPAs buyer's remorse due to misaligned, siloed usage and inability to scale. Culture is just as important as technology. When I was doing consulting for iBailey, we actually were having quite a few discussions within their RPA team, and they had really quickly on discovered that culture was 50% of the RPA implementation, as well as the technology itself. And this goes back to me saying that you need to make sure that you have the right people, process, and technology in place. Those three pieces are so important to focus on: people, processing, technology, and that really builds a strong organizational culture. So I've had many situations where I'm working with the executive team, and they are not really trying to build a per se a center of excellence or bring in the right stakeholders so that we can define better what types of business processes are going to be available, what should be, what are the opportunities, the risks, and so it's really important to dive deep into each segment of your business just to kind of see what are the opportunities there that you have and what are some of the risks and what are some of the challenges. That's not only going to really help the alignment from all of your team members and especially that stakeholder committee that is going to be building out these RPA, these technologies, be evangelists to the rest of the community or the rest of the firm, but it's also going to build a level of safe culture and innovation within your firm where people are going to feel really great about bringing different types of ideas up. And generally, there's a lot of deterrence when new technology is brought in. And so that is really half the battle, and that's going to be a really awesome thing for you to get past. And actually, just long-term effects, it's really positive to make sure you're focusing on the culture. Now, in this Deloitte article, let's break this down because this is also important as a far of a drawback. It's discussing that RPA software bots are capable of performing a list of more than 600 actions in a given sequence. Complex workflows, even those containing about 600 steps, can be arranged in an intuitive manner by connecting actions with RPA's graphical interface. Because of this capacity to reduce the complexity of actions in a given sequence, RPA provides companies the flexibility to direct the software bots to address and resolve the intricacies of complicated processes. Now, the reason why I bring this article up is because it focuses on 600 steps, complex workflows. Even though it can do that, it does. You absolutely should not use it for that. You have to really start small. And even if you have somewhere 25 to 50 steps that you need a bot to do, you really have to reevaluate that. Are those grandfathered in steps? Are those steps really valid? What can be cut out of there? Where can you refine that, redefine that, and make it more streamlined? You really want to have that mindset of standardize, simplify, and then automate. Those three things are really important. So again, as you may see articles like this where it says you can do this many complex workflows, it's not necessarily best practice. So make sure that you are keeping that in mind. Now let's talk about some business cases for RPA. Now I've got a few here that I can discuss, and then I'll go down into a couple others that are pretty prevalent in the profession. But some here that are pretty simple that I've seen be done before is procure to payment automation gaps of vendor onboarding, a bot that can vet new vendors with a complete report on credit scores, tax data, quote to automation gaps, order exception processing. The bot can automatically do a price check and verify the current price against the sales orders. You have a record to report automation gaps, data extraction for accounting close. A bot can gather and consolidate transactions and reconcile them in your ERP. So that could really save a lot of time when you're doing month end, year end. It can also, I've seen it be done creating elimination entries or creating intercompany entries. Those are some great things. But the overarching character on this is that you should always focus on, in the beginning stages before you get too complex, you really want to focus on working with master data when you're trying to build out some bots. So master data is going to be the data coming in, which is customers, vendors, or inventory items, and that's going to be a really great proof of concept for you to get your feet wet, but also make sure that you're starting with good data moving forward, and that's so important for any type of reporting that you're going to be doing, for governance as well. Now let's look at some tax management use cases for RPA. One is a great one here. This is basically number one, a tax bot can be mapped to scan tax forms, spreadsheets in a database, or extracting online financial data, such as a balance sheet. After proper mapping, each field entry is copied from a paper or spreadsheet into the online tax form. So again, those are the business rules that I was talking about: properly mapping, making sure there's a business layer within your bot. Now, the RPA software can flag an error if the primary data source field doesn't match with the tax form. And again, that's business rules that you can make sure that you add in there, negative and positive use cases. So for instance, if you set this bot up to have a conditional formatting that it's only allowed to bring in numerical values. So if, for instance, you've got some data that has alphanumerical values, you can make sure that there's data integrity coming in, that is getting flagged for an error. You can go and fix that. It can be audited, and then you can manually file that information. So it's not only important from a data integrity standpoint, but again, the automation standpoint, in making sure that this intervention is being done. So this helps you out with structured data. At the end of the day, it starts to really help you build structured data. And what's this use case? Who would this work for? Well, small CPA consulting firms that need to file a tax return in huge volumes. RPA for tax management is going to speed up this process of tax filing and ensure accuracy. So I've seen this be implemented in firms, and especially during the pandemic, this was this along with actually filing $0 extensions. That can take quite a bit of time. I've seen bots be used for that. Another case, which was actually in the news with regard to PPP and the SBA, RPA was so effective with the SBA PPP process of sending or actually submitting forms so quickly that it was the SBA actually banned RPA from firms or from institutions, financial institutions, from using it. So it's not only going to help with efficiency, but it's very effective to the point where, again, the SBA had disallowed that from being used anymore. So, these are, when it's used properly, it can be extremely efficient and extremely effective. But again, these are some use cases that may not fit everyone's needs. So it's really important to make sure that you're focusing and honing in on what are the use cases that I need, or working with process mining or discovery bots to understand where maybe it's not something within tax, maybe it's onboarding new clients. So these are things where you need to sit down and really reevaluate. So next, we're going to talk about some best practices for implementation of RPA. So this is really, really great because I want to make sure that everyone is kind of focusing and honing in on the fact that you must treat this no different than any other IT project. It's really a long-term investment to see the ROI. You're going to see some ROI very early on. One thing to keep in mind that this actually can be stood up within 1 to 2 months if done well, and the scoping is done very well. And that's really going to be so much quicker than something like API development or third-party integration development. Um, depends on what you're doing. If you're doing scraping from screens or trying to bring in different types of reconciliation type of information. So an RPA, again, the RPA implementation is pretty straightforward. If you have a clear and detailed roadmap, as you can see above here, most RPA implementations can take less than 2 months from what I've seen. If it obviously gets much more complex, if it goes through many different types of integrations, many different types of platforms, and it could take a little bit longer. It's going to take a little bit longer user acceptance testing. So again, this is going to include time required to configure, test, and launch RPA bots into the production environments that you have. But focus on 3 things as we get into this business process automation best practices. You really, again, always want to focus on people, process, and technology. So what you see here is understanding the right processes. Again, you do this day in, day out with your IT teams. Understanding the processes, the pain points, the business value that this will gain from it. You want to do a lot of research on the right tool. Again, there's not just one player out there. There's a multitude of players out there in the RPA space. You want to make sure that you're using the right tool, something that's cloud-based, not necessarily something that you want to actually throw onto your existing systems. So that's really something that you want to have importance on it. And by finding the right tool, you need to spend a lot of time working with these community editions and playing around with these community editions and building them out. That's going to build such great competency to then have you feel confident enough to say, we have found the right tool. But generally what I've done working as director of business systems in the past is I will focus and bring down my top 3 tools that I want to work on and do heavy R&D on those tools and see how quickly I can stand up a specific process in those 3 different tools. And then you also want to look at, within those 3 different tools, you want to look at the maintenance, not just from a cost standpoint, from the maintenance of how difficult is this going to be for me to fix this if something were to break, or if I need to change. For instance, I've got something going through 3 different systems. If one of those systems gets upgraded because it's in a cloud environment every quarter and something breaks or something needs to be adjusted, how quickly can I adjust and adapt and fix these types of tools? And that comes in again to the low code, no code. So when you're looking for the right tool, make sure you're looking at the no code, low code movement. And then you again want to have the right processes, which is really defined with well-defined goals. And this can actually be more so objectives. Goals is what we attain to, but what is our true objective for what we want to achieve out of this? So the goal, really is going to be not just from implement this within 2 months, but we want to actually be able to increase the the employee net promoter score, which in turn increases the NPS score, because you're now able to, because you've implemented this automation, you save many hours of time of these mundane tasks, and you're actually able to move staff members and redefine these members of your staff to do much more human interaction and much more advisory, which is really the most needed thing during this pandemic. So, that's something that you really want to make sure that you're focusing on heavily as you're building out the right processes. And again, you have the clear hierarchy. Who are the sponsors for this particular type of project within RPA? You want to have the right team. And generally, what I recommend is having a good steering committee or a center of excellence within your firm. And that can be, sometimes it's a center of excellence, which is specifically to business processes, or a center of excellence that's IT. So you want to make sure you have a clear hierarchy of who are the project sponsors, who are the technology sponsors, who are the stakeholders within this committee, and what is their influence within each and every one of these segments of the business. And as we flow into the clear hierarchy of the steering committee, you're going to have employee involvement. Now, employee involvement and user training go hand in hand, and I think that is really where we talk about the culture that I was just discussing earlier. That 50% of this is culture that makes this successful. So when I talk about employee involvement, those stakeholders in the clear hierarchy of the steering committee should be making sure that they are evangelists, clear evangelists of this project, of this process, of this movement, and that they're actually digging in and working with each individual segment of the business that they're responsible for. And what I generally have done in the past, and what I've really encouraged, is to make sure that these stakeholders are not only cascading down the evangelism, but really making sure that everyone feels like they're involved. Because most of the time when there's not enough involvement, the employees will start to come from a fear-based perspective, and they will say, oh, well, this is just a new technology. It's going to take away from my job. I have no redefinition of what I'm going to be doing. I'm probably going to be out of position because a bot's going to take my main objective of what I do day to day. And so that's, again, where you want to make sure that you are setting precedents, the cadence, that the employees are extremely important to the organization, that they align with the roadmap of the organization, and their brilliance aligns with the roadmap to build a more innovative practice. And that goes a long, long way. Everyone feels included. It starts to build a much safer innovation culture. But as well as the steering committee is doing that and building that out, having user training is so incredibly important, because if they don't feel equipped for working with these bots or understanding what these bots do, then they're going to really feel like they're useless. So the user training will consist, I think, and should generally consist of not only understanding basics of the bots, of what RPA does. There actually is some really great, and a lot of the RPA vendors have really great free academies, like Electronic has a free academy, UiPath, Automation Anywhere. So depending on the vendor you go to, make sure as part of your onboarding process that each and every one of your employees that are going to be affected by this in one way or the other is going through those basic trainings, because there's some really great ones. Electronic actually has, I think, the best one, which is very, very great from a startup of understanding what RPA is, what it does, and they have some more free advanced type of academies that they go through. So that is something where you should do. You should also make sure that you're from an internal firm perspective or a business perspective, that you're also giving them training on the alignment of what your roadmap looks like, what the future of the firm looks like. So it's not just understanding what RPA is, so they're familiar with it and how the technology works, how it's going to redefine and empower their jobs, but also how it aligns to what your business as a whole is moving to. If it's completely being digitalized and automated as many places as we can, and your firm is moving completely towards being, virtual CFOs, or heavily investing in your CAS segment of your business, and that's why you're doing this. That way you can make sure that you can actually have great feedback from your employees, and you actually will be able to understand if they want to be a part of that movement. So it helps you in many different ways. You also will, within those three pieces of the clear hierarchy, the employee involvement and user training, you're going to start to find who the deterrents are within your organization. You'll be able to see who are going to be the people that are maybe spoiling your innovation culture or the culture at hand. It helps to actually bring up the good, bad, and the ugly. So it's an opportunity for you to not only really redefine your business and your internal and external business processes, but it's going to help you actually determine who in the business is aligned with you moving forward, and to make sure that you have the strongest firm buy-in to move forward. Now, within the next step is continuous improvement. Generally, with these center of excellence or steering committees that I highly value, that should be driving these types of implementations. Within that, there should be monthly steering committees, even bi-weekly in the beginning stages. Now, what this is going to have you do is going to allow you to look at success metrics. What does success look like? How many hours are we saving? Headcount hours are we saving? Where are we able to move these particular people into more revenue generating areas of the business? And then you could look again at NPS, ENPS. One example is that when a great friend of mine, when he in his firm, when he had put in it was really a basic bot, but it was essentially helping with document electronic document signs, and moving those data that were DocuSigned into specific types of areas within the firm, which were secure sites. This actually was something that was taking hours and hours and hours from one of his staff members to be doing, and she actually was crying tears of joy because that took away from her massive workload to be able to do something different and work on things that are much more value generating processes. And now, the reason why I bring that up is because it actually helped not from just an ROI perspective, but it really helped from the culture and the health of an employee, which could easily be burnt out by doing some of these tasks. But again, those are going to be looking at success metrics. You're going to be looking at roadmaps of the different types of upgrades that are happening. Feature management from different types of cloud products that you have integrating that maybe this bot is going through. So how are we going to do we need to make any changes, any governance changes, any feature releases that could possibly affect or break this bot, where we need to be ready for that. So and as well as the continuous improvement is the feedback that you're getting from your employees. That's part of the employee involvement. Making sure you're having surveys to make sure that that how they are feeling, how they have felt within the first couple months within having these bots, and how do they feel within the new definitions of their positions. And then lastly, you have your backup plans. This is always something with any deployment or implementation that you have, and falls under the success of any type of upgrades or any type of changes, feature management that may happen within any of your systems that these bots are working on. So it's important to really try to have sandbox environments, to really do a lot of user acceptance testing in there and do a lot of testing for changes. And so that's really important. You always want to make sure you have a backup plan. Generally, you have, if you have a product that is on premise, you can quickly make the backups there. If you have on cloud, you should be able to restore from backup, whether it's coming from AWS or Azure. You have the ability to kind of to have those backups. So make sure that you have that always as part of your success plan, to make sure that you can roll back if necessary. But these really are the business process automation best practices that I've come to define. An overall arching characterization of this is you need to focus on, again, people, process, and technology. So next, I want to get into the last part of the segment. This is really a concept called Clean Your Room by Dr. Jordan Peterson. Dr. Jordan Peterson believes that only by taking care of your immediate environment can you then move on to bigger challenges? The idea stems from millennials who want to change the capitalistic economic structure, though it can be applied broadly. This actually comes from his book, The 12 Rules of Life, and this is one of those rules that we'll discuss. And again, this is obviously metaphorical, but this actually really has a lot of relevance into building automation, building innovation within your firm, and how to better your firm in multitude of different ways. So let's look at cleaning your room, and look at the first part of this. It's hoarding, and you want to ask yourself a situation, ask yourself some questions about this situation of a hoarder. If you can see in this picture, this is a very, very difficult thing to see, the amount of hoarding that's going on. So, but amidst this chaos in this photo, is that just the person's house or their mind? And the answer is there really is no difference. So Dr. Jordan Peterson's emphasis on this topic is if you want to change the world, the environment, your business, your firm, you start from yourself and you work outwardly. So you build your competency that way. You cleaning your room will actually allow you to take on bigger challenges in life. And that is really something mentally that really will put you in a great mindset to make sure that you're building the automation, building the innovation in your firm properly, and again with a clear conscious and clear mind. Now, when we look at cleaning your room and actually in the process of organizing, so what exactly are you organizing? Are you organizing the objective world, or are you organizing your field of total experience within your business and your firm? And how do you conceive the limits of your being? So if you want to organize your psyche, start by cleaning your room first. Again, it's more simple and a tangible process. You start where you start. So if something announces itself to you, or something that you can be prepared, you can to fix it. For instance, dust or rubbish behind your computer desk. And again, it can not only have to be something that's physical like that, it actually can very much be digitally. If you've got millions of icons all over your desktop, that makes it, again, very disorganized there. You want to start cleaning that up, because that actually can bring on stress and anxiety, and that can cascade down to not only your family, but other members of your business or your firm. And you want to look at actually, you want to fix the things you repeat every day. They're not trivial. What are the routines you do every day? They're the most important things that you can make adjustments on. So, those small things really make up probably 80% of your day. And again, those aren't trivial. Making little adjustments to those things will actually really help you and go a long way. So, that can be, for instance, when you're organizing, again, like I said, digitally, but organizing um, within your firm has a lot of perspective or the positives. I've seen many challenges where firms wanted to work with other firms, other partners. However, when they came in, they saw how terribly disorganized the firm was. And from a branding perspective, they didn't want to be involved with them. Um, and what that actually shows is not only is it going to help you be more organizational uh, from you inwardly and kind of talk the talk and walk the walk, but it's also going to help you to really have a better grasp on how can I help my clients. If you can't clean your own room and do simple things like that, how are you going to be able to clean your client's house, clean their business really more effectively? And again, these are things where metaphorically I speak about, because it's not just, again, just cleaning your room, which actually helps in a multitude of ways, but when you clean your business processes, when you clean your and redefine those business processes that have been antiquated or grandfathered in for a long time, it actually kind of clears out and gives you a better perspective of what I want this to look like, what I want my firm to look like. Another thing that is really important is getting new talent and retaining talent. So, if you are completely disorganized, not only from a business process, technology, and even physically or disorganized, you're not only going to miss out a lot of things, a lot of opportunities, but you're also going to not put your best front forward. Biggest thing you want to focus on as well is making sure that you're getting the best talent that's available for you. When these new kids that are really kind of birthed into technology, into the digital world, they want to not only see that your firm is organized and well structured and scalable and stable, but also that you have this type of great concept and culture that's built in. This is going to be more favorable to you. It's not only going to make your staff more excited to be in the organization and to see where this organization is going to grow from an innovation standpoint, and how you're going to actually better serve your businesses more than you do now. But it's also going to have these new students that come in out of university to look at you as the leaders, and somewhere they see themselves, and somewhere they see the passion and the success and innovation that's being built into the culture, and they want to be part of that. So these are all things you want to think about that are really, really important, to make sure that you're building out the best culture and firm, and ultimately the best customer success that you can bring to your clients. And then lastly here, we want to always make sure you're always working on improving yourself. You have to ask. You have to ask. Your mind is an incredible thing. Once you give your mind a genuine aim, your mind will reconfigure itself around that aim. So actually, technically, when you look at, for instance, your eyesight, so if you're actually focused on one particular thing, if you're staring at one particular thing, your eye actually starts to build out kind of a blur and just focuses on that one particular myopic thing that you're focusing on, kind of like a tunnel vision. So that's important, so that really make sure that you're figuring out the right objectives, the right goals, and you're focusing on those. You can have key performance and KPIs, key performance indicators for those objectives. What are the objectives? What are the overall goals, and how are we going to get there? And then you can actually add that type of into your mission statement in a firm. And that's really important as a partner, to make sure you have a mission statement that you can follow. Really have good guidelines and good guide rails that everyone will be aligned to. But what you want to make sure is what you quote unquote see is what you aim at. That's, you want to be careful, because it can be a double-edged sword of what you aim at. You need to really aim up. You always want to aim up, to elevate your firm, elevate your business, elevate your culture. If there's something that you could or would change, even if it's a small step, that's okay. One small step in your aim makes you that much better than yesterday, and that's progress. So you just want to continue to work on improving yourself, improving your firm, and that this all not only goes to continuous education, but also really having continuous touch points within your firm, within your staff members, to make sure that they are happy, and make sure that they feel like they can constantly contribute to the type of innovation and digital transformation that you're making, and that they always align to what you're doing. And you also want to make sure that you're getting feedback. So that feedback, whether it be surveys, how can you help not only your firm within automation, within technology, within AI, within blockchain, or different types of ideas to help serve your customers better? How can you improve on those types of things? So that is something that is a great mindset that you should always have, and it'll actually will cascade down to the rest of your firm. So there's a saying within jiu-jitsu that a black belt, which is the highest level you can get, is only a white belt that never quit. So when I bring that up is that you always want to make sure that you have the mentality of a white belt. I don't know everything. I always want to continue to improve on myself. I want to be a sponge. Your superpower should be intellectual curiosity. And that is what is going to really make you go above and beyond, not only to serve your customers, but it's going to make you the best firm out there. So make sure, again, you focus on always improving yourself, the intellectual curiosity, and always see yourself as a white belt, that you're always still learning, and you're constantly understanding the landscape out there, and what your other firms are doing. And again, really do your own research. That's one thing I can leave with you at the end of this is, do your own research. Don't even listen to any of the thought leaders that are out there. Spend an hour a week and do research on all the players, all the innovations, all the technology. There's some really great platforms out there that help you do that. Some accountants accelerator programs that can help you do that as well. So with that, I really want to thank you so much for being here. It's been an absolute. My name is RPA Costs. If you have any questions or concerns with your RPA implementation or need free consultation, please feel free to reach me out at Sage, Raphael.Costs@sage.com. Thank you very much and have a great rest of your conference.